40 minutes. So while we wait for others to join, our focus for today's webinar will be on IoT for agriculture, scalable fertigation management. And we have our invited guest speaker, in person of Dr. Emmanuel Abioye. Is currently a postdoctoral scholar with the Department of Agriculture and Biological Engineering, University of California, Davis. He bagged a PhD in electrical engineering at University Technology Malaysia, with research focused on precision agriculture and model predictive control. So today he will be speaking with us for the next 20 minutes. He will be sharing his knowledge, experience in the area of fertigation in agriculture and precision agriculture as well. After his presentation, we'll be open for question and answers. So please take note of your questions while he's presenting, so that you can either share your questions through the chat box, or when it's time for question and answer, you can just raise up your hand or mute your mic, and we can hear you out. Then, during the course of the presentation, I'll be sharing the link for registration. So please use the registration link to fill in your details in the registration form. So please make sure your names are correctly written out. After the webinar, we are going to send out the link for the recorded video. And in addition, we're going to be sending out your e-certificates to all those who fill out the registration form. And the purpose of this webinar is also to enable us collaborate, connect with one another. And let's say you want to, you are interested in collaboration, maybe with our guest speaker today. So you can just make that known in the comment section in the registration form, and we can always get back to you. All right, without further ado, I'd like to pass the time to our guest speaker, Dr. Emmanuel. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Elijah, for the opportunity given to me to present in this webinar. I'm sorry, I want to apologize to all the participants on this webinar. I'm unable to share my video. We tested few minutes ago, and it was fine, but honestly, it's beyond my control. So I have to go ahead with my presentation. Dr. Elijah, can you please allow me share my screen? Enable me to be able to share my screen.
You're muted, Dr. Elijah.
Yes, you can share now, Dr. Emmanuel. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, once again, thank you very much for the opportunity to present some of my work in the area of Internet of Things for precision agriculture. The title of my presentation is Internet of Things IoT for Scalable Fertigation Management. As I've earlier been introduced, I'm Emmanuel Abioye. I'm a precision ag researcher. The outline of the presentation, I will start with an overview, which is an introduction about the concept of Internet of Things as regards monitoring in precision agriculture domain. I will also continue my presentation on IoT-based monitoring approach for sensing of soil, plants, and weather parameters, as well as also touch base on some critical parameters that are needed to be monitored for optimal fertigation management. Thereafter, I will also touch base on 2 case studies for large-scale farmland or greenhouse, as well as small-scale farmland. I will conclude my presentation and, of course, provide some references as well as some gallery, picture gallery of some of my work. Thank you. So, as a sort of introduction, Internet of Things is about the network of devices, which can be sensors, can be actuators, can be different edge devices, with a view to use them to collect data in real time within any environment. The environment can be an agricultural environment, which we are discussing now. It can be maybe a building and built environment, it could be transportation, and so on and so forth. And the idea of collecting the data is to be able to transmit the data over the internet and for onward storage into a database from where it can be further analyzed, and so that sense can be made out of the data that has been sensed. If you take a look at my figure 1, you can see clearly a schematic diagram of an IoT monitoring system, of course, specifically tailored towards agricultural domain, where we can have different type of sensors. For the essence of this presentation, I'm showcasing 2 sensors, VH400 sensor as well as nutrient sensors, which senses soil moisture content as well as the nutrients within the soil, which are critical for optimal fertigation management. And when these sensors are interfaced with edge devices, the edge devices serve as a sort of a platform through which various sensor nodes can aggregate data together and for onward push to be stored in a cloud for further use. In terms of scalable fertigation, the idea of fertigation is to deliver fertilizer through irrigation system directly to the plants. Of course, there are different means by which fertilizer can be delivered to the crop, but of course, it has been tested through research that both can be combined simultaneously through irrigation process for optimal application of nutrients to plants. So, in terms of scalable fertigation, the size at which you want to probably fertigate matters, because depending on the capacity of a farmer or an hobbyist that is into farming, you might want to start on a very small scale, or you have the wherewithal to practice your farming on a large scale level. So integrating IoT into fertigation management is helpful to enhance the monitoring of soil parameters. The critical soil parameters can be soil moisture content, soil nutrients such as the nitrogen, potassium, calcium, which are the macronutrients that are important for plant growth, as well as so many other micronutrients that can be sensed by nutrient sensors. Weather, of course, is very critical to the performance of plants. So weather, sensing of different weather parameters such as air temperature, rate of water loss within a growing environment is very, very important. And all this are geared towards ensuring optimal water and fertilizer saving. So the integrating IoT into fertigation management, as research has proven it that it can help ensure optimal water and fertilizer saving. So the opportunities from scalable fertigation system that is integrated with IoT system includes increasing crop yield, reduction in water and fertilizer usage, I've mentioned that, improving soil health, as well as helping farmers to save time as well as labor. So there are different IoT-based monitoring approach that can be used for sensing soil plants and weather parameters within a farming environment. We could use proximal sensing approach, where sensors are located very close to the plant or soil itself for real-time data collection. This can be, we can see the illustration from figure 2A and B. While remote sensing approach is through the use, of course, collecting data about soil moisture or soil nutrients through the use of area platforms such as UAV, satellites, as well as some other airborne platforms. So depending on the size of your farm, you might want to kind of determine the optimal sensing method, IoT-enabled sensing method that can be appropriate for your farm. For a small scale of farming or in a greenhouse environment, you could use proximal sensing approach, while for large scale farming environments, is good. You could try for practicability purpose, you can use IoT enabled remote sensing approach. So there are several considerations you need to consider as well before you deploy your IoT system for scalable fertigation management. The size of the farm, I've mentioned about that. The nature of the sensors you are going to deploy, are they wired sensors or wireless sensors? And of course, you also need to consider your network connectivity, the type of network that you have around, or the one that's based on the scale of your farm. For a very large scale, of course, you might want to consider the use of LoRa or Sigfox, as well as GSM network, because your sensor nodes needs to communicate with each other and send their packets to the cloud. So network connectivity is very, very important. The cost of components, type of crop to be cultivated, power management. You need to power these sensor devices. Security and privacy issues are also part of the consideration you need to factor in before you consider deploying IoT into your for management of your irrigation or fertigation, as the case may be. So these are the critical parameters I've mentioned about weather as a critical parameter that you need to sense. You could sense that using a weather station. You could embed an IoT module into your weather station to help collect the data in real time. Some user data are also very, very important. User information that you know as a farmer, they are very, very important that you need to consider, because you as a farmer, you can actually physically track the growth stage of your plant. So some of these parameters are user defined. Soil sensors, plant sensors are also available that you could interface with your embedded board, such as Arduino or Raspberry Pi, to help collect the data from the soil environment. And all this can be aggregated together for optimal irrigation, scheduling, and fertigation. So my first case study is based on some previous work that I've done within a greenhouse environment. Part of my PhD research, I deployed, of course, I tried to kind of develop an IoT architecture that considers the physical layer that comprises of the greenhouse itself, the sensors, actuators, as well as flow meters, weather station, which constitute the physical layer of the IoT architecture. The data layer comprises of the interaction between the controller, the edge device that help to aggregate all the data coming from the various greenhouse to the data server. And from there, the application layer refers to a web framework or mobile app that was developed to be able to view in real time what the performance of the plants will grow within the greenhouse environment, as well as remotely controlling the switching on of relays that are responsible for opening of supply of water as well as fertilizer to the greenhouse environment. So this conceptual framework explains how the experiment was set up. Of course, we have a water source through which the fertilizer is mixed, because we use more of liquid fertilizer to cultivate plants within the greenhouse environment for fertigation. And so we have a water source, different water sources where we mix our fertilizer, the liquid fertilizer, to be supplied to the greenhouse. And so also we also try to track the performance of the plants. So we do some sort of image processing to be able to estimate the crop coefficient. And all these data together from the various sensors, from the flow meter, from the soil moisture sensors, are aggregated on a Raspberry Pi that push the information to the cloud for storage. So this figure 6 illustrates an IoT monitoring and control dashboard that we use to monitor in real time what's going on within the greenhouse environment. we could see the weather station data coming from the weather station, an estimation of water loss, the greenhouse environment parameters about the plants within a particular greenhouse. We have 3 different greenhouses, the parameters that we monitor and sense, and a lot of information, useful information. And here on this slide, I have different IoT devices that are used, ranging from the 4G router, the greenhouse, interface camera, because the camera captures image of plants to track their growth stage. We also try to track the amount of irrigation volume we send into a greenhouse, and we could see that a flow meter is installed, interface with an Arduino the MCU for onward data storage. So figure 8 illustrates the greenhouse environment where about 100 polybags were 100 plants were grown in greenhouse, in this particular greenhouse. And upon maturity, a lot of the plants were successfully grown and matured well. The harvest was good. And based on the experience I have in doing some of these experiments as part of my PhD research, a lot of the cost of investments or purchase of sensors and purchase of internet subscription was recovered, and the return of investment was encouraging. So it's initially for starters, for farmers, one does not need to be discouraged that, oh, because of purchase of some of these sensor devices might be too high. If you start on a small scale and you kind of cultivate your plant very well, the harvest can be sold, and from there you can get return to your investment. This is another greenhouse where different, fully integrated with IoT system for demonstration and for testing different control strategies that I worked on as part of my PhD research. So this is another web framework for fertigation management that we develop as well. So the second case study that I also want to dwell on is for a large scale farm or orchard. It's very difficult. It's practically impossible to deploy sensors all over a place. You have a land that is as big as 1 hectare of land, or maybe 2 to 5 hectares of land, and you cultivate different plants on it. It's very, very difficult practically impossible to deploy sensors all over the land. So the approach now is to fly your drone equipped with different type of cameras integrated on the drone, and from there you could collect different imagery autonomously or remote. The drone can be controlled autonomously or remotely controlled, and from there you could collect different data. The data can be stitched together, analyzed, and different vegetation indices can be generated from your vegetation indices. Okay, you could delineate your farmland or plot into different management zone, and from there you could be able, from the map generated from your flight operation, you can pinpoint a particular area that is water stressed, that is water deficient, that is nutrient deficient. From there, you can now apply your water or fertilizer optimally to that particular area that is water stressed or that is nutrient deficient. So this method of IoT monitoring integrated with drones and UAV is viable and is currently being promoted. So another aspect of this is using hyperspectral camera as well as multispectral camera. From there, you can generate spectral analysis of your farmland, and from there you can infer from the reflectance of the plant to the camera. The color spectra can tell you a particular area of the field that is water deficient and that is nutrient deficient. Similarly, thermal sensors integrated on UAVs are also useful to detect areas that are nutrient deficient and requires site-specific management of nutrients and water to those areas. In conclusion, IoT-enabled proximal and remote sensing approach can be combined for optimal fertigation management. Both can be integrated, can be considered for use depending on the scale at which you are cultivating. If you are for a small scale farmer, you can toe the line of course, practically proximal sensing can be appropriate for you. But for very large scale farm where you have hectares of land, you need to apply IoT enabled remote sensing approach. Of course, the data collected, a lot of data pulled from the various sensors can be used for further optimal decisions. So AI can come in to help you make sense of the data that have been collected. In overall, scalable fertigation management with IoT integration can play an important role in improving yield and farmers' efficiency. Also, production can increase to meet up with growing population needs in Nigeria and globally through the integration of this current trend of IoT, artificial intelligence, and different remote sensing as well to help enhance agricultural production. Here are some references I refer to. Just few galleries of some of the work I did during my PhD research, setting up the IoT system in 3 different greenhouses, as well as some experimental proof of concept of based on IoT, partly part of what I did during my PhD research. Yeah. Thank you for listening. I'll listen to your questions and I will try as much as possible to answer. Thank you. Dr. Elijah.
Okay, thank you very much, Dr. Emmanuel Abiodun. We appreciate the knowledge which you have just shared with us. It's very interesting, and I believe most of our participants who are interested in fertigation or IoT for agriculture speak 1 or 2 things. So before I open the ground for question and answers, I would like to inform us of the next webinar. So the next webinar will be coming on the 21st of March. So we'll be focusing more on Starlink, a disruptive internet. We want to look at the opportunities of Starlink in Nigeria. Is it for everyone? Should you also get Starlink? And so we have an expert from the industry who will be coming on board. So I will send out the notification after this. So please, I've sent out the registration link in the chat box. So please kindly help us to fill up your registration link. We're going to send you the e-certificates after this webinar, and also the link to the recorded video. Then also, if you have questions or you want to collaborate with the speaker, you can just indicate in the form, registration form, so that we can help facilitate that. All right, so I would like to open the ground. So please, if you have any questions, but before we take questions, can we just quickly take group photograph, if you don't mind. Dr. Emmanuel, can you please stop sharing so that we take a group photograph, if that is okay with everyone, then before we ask our question, because we are limited by time. All right, so please, if you're there and you want us to see your lovely faces, please kindly switch on your cameras. Yeah. Okay, I can see all the wonderful doctors, researchers, professors.
Dr. Abiodun.
Dr. Abiodun.
No. Nice seeing you.
So after the count of 3, 1, 2, 3. One more. After the count of 3, 1, smile, 2, 3. Okay, so thank you very much for your cooperation. So please, if you have any questions, I think the floor is now open for question and answers. I think I'll just read the first few questions in the chat box. So number 1 says, what should be the roadmap for someone interested in this area of expertise or expertise? Okay. So maybe Dr. Emmanuel, you want to take that question first? what should be the roadmap for someone who is interested in this area? And how much is needed as a startup capital for this project?
Okay. Yeah, the roadmap is first, if you are interested in this type of research, maybe project, is to try to kind of acquire the skill, at least of getting to know more about the area, which is Internet of Things, interfacing of sensors, having knowledge about sensors, how they work, how you can interface them to different embedded boards, and trying to also know about trying to how your data can be pushed from the embedded board to the cloud for storage. Because at the end of the day, for an average farmer, you want to monitor what is going on your farm, and you also want to be able to initiate some controls remotely from at the comfort of your home and not necessarily visiting the farm. So for monitoring and control purpose, you need to try to at least acquire the skill. And if you don't have the skill, you can engage the service of someone that have an idea about Internet of Things and how it can be their deployments for in agricultural domain. Also, for the startup, how much is needed? It depends on we talk about scalability. It depends on the scale at which you want to start. Of course, it will be encouraged to start on a small scale, level, and maybe within your house environment, you could just get some few sensors, soil moisture sensors. They are DIY soil moisture sensors. Get your relay, small Arduino Mega, some other prototyping boards are there. Of course, in Nigeria, there's a particular researcher in NIDA promoting his embedded board locally in Abuja, one doctor in NIDA. So there are so many embedded boards available that can be interfaced to sensors, different sensors. So some of these are small scale level. You could do that within your home environment, get a garden, and from there. So it depends on the scale at which you want to. That will inform the devices and components you need to acquire for the startup. Dr. Elijah, maybe you can share more light in this area as well. You are muted, Dr. Elijah, you are muted.
Sorry,
Okay.
Thanks, Dr. Emmanuel, for the response. So just to buttress on that, for those of you who are looking at what's the idea of cost, we are currently building up a prototype for IoT smart fertigation system. So we've started purchasing the parts. I think in our official webinar, we're going to show you the prototype. We're going to show you all the cost that was involved, all the steps that was taken to build it up. So I think that would be maybe helpful to some of you that really want to start, and you want to start practically, you want to focus on the practical aspect. So I think in the next in the upper webinar, that's in April, the system should be ready. So then we'll be able to share with you the cost and all the steps that was involved in developing it. So if you're interested, just keep an eye on our webinars, and we'll definitely share the information with you. Thank you. All right. Is there anyone else with questions for Dr. Emmanuel? Maybe you are working on similar research, you are thinking of collaboration, or you want some useful information. I think this is the opportunity. And one thing with Dr. Emmanuel is conversant with all the job openings in research, postdoc, and all of that in the area of agriculture. So if you're also interested in maybe doing a postdoctorate, maybe in the US or Canada, sometimes he has some useful information I can share with you. So I think, right. So if you have any questions, please go ahead while we still have time. We just have about 5 minutes, thereabout more, or 6 minutes. So you can unmute your mic if you have questions. Maybe while we are waiting for people to unmute and ask questions, I have a question for Dr. Emmanuel. I saw you use the webcam to monitor the growth of the plants. Okay. So in terms of integration, did you integrate the webcam directly to your Raspberry Pi, or you just integrated it directly to the web platform?
Okay, basically what we did was that the Raspberry Pi itself has the capability of being integrated with a Pi camera. The way it is fabricated, you can it has its own camera that you can interface directly with it. So that camera is, there's a socket where you can plug the camera and just program the camera to capture images at different time interval. So there's a scheduling interface on the Raspberry Pi called Tab scheduling interface. From there, you could calibrate the camera as well as instruct the camera to capture at different time interval. So basically what we did was the camera captures the image and feeds. We use an OpenCV library to also do some image processing on the Raspberry Pi to a kind of estimate crop coefficients. Because from the agronomic point of view, crop coefficient is very, very important to track. From the crop coefficients, you can track the growth stage of the plants at different life cycle. And that will inform how you calibrate your irrigation scheduling, because crop at initial stage, the irrigation requirements or fertigation requirements will be very low. Mm-hmm. And at the stage of their life cycle, the requirements will differ. And also at maturity. So the crop coefficient is what we basically track using that image coming from the Pi camera into the OpenCV library, and also through some image processing algorithm to estimate that crop coefficient.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's quite interesting. So at every intervals, you just take picture of, is it the old crops or just
the foliage area of a particular plant? We use some test plants. We take some samples. Oh, so the foliage area, the camera is good, the resolution is good. So the foliage area, it tracks it. So from there, the KC varies as the crop coefficient varies as the plant grows.
That's quite interesting to know. Okay, thank you for that. So anybody with questions, please feel free to ask your questions now while we have the expert with us.
Good afternoon, Doctor.
Thank you, Dr. Sally. Yeah, good afternoon, sir.
Yeah, good afternoon. It's quite an interesting presentation. Thank you for enlightening us on this new technology, and we hope that sooner or later, it will leverage on it, and then for the food shortages in Nigeria. However, I wouldn't know if you consider diseases on aspect of some of the plant. In the case where you have some disease, how do you tackle that? Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. It's very interesting. And basically, part of what we did, which was not presented there, is plant disease detection. I remember then I collaborated with Dr. Elijah on that. And also part of what the Raspberry Pi camera can do, interface with the Raspberry Pi. The camera, because it's embedded on the Raspberry Pi, which is a system on chip, is a processor on its own. The Raspberry Pi is a computer on its own. So the processing capability is higher than ordinary Arduino Mega, as well as some other prototyping boards. So part of the work we did was, as part of this project, is to capture plant leaf, the canopy leaf, and from there to be able to do some disease detection. So basically, the trend now is because of the fact that you need a deep learning model to be able to classify, okay, this is a particular disease, or this plant is healthy or not. The current trend now is to a kind of collect samples of data, which you can do using a Raspberry Pi interface with camera. And from there, the data you collect, which are different plant imagery, can be trained on edge impulse. there's a particular platform called Edge Impulse where you have different pre-trained deep learning model. From there, you could easily train your model with few samples of data collected from any particular plants. You can train the data on Edge Impulse. Then on Edge Impulse, you can directly deploy the models you have developed on your different boards, whether Arduino Mega or Raspberry Pi itself, or all other prototyping boards. So this question you asked can be addressed using a Raspberry Pi interface with a Pi camera to capture different plant disease. Of course, you need to, depending on the disease you want to detect, you need to get some sample of the disease condition and the LD condition of that particular plant. So from there, you can train the model to dictate, oh, I haven't been trained with this type of image. The deep learning model will be able to dictate, oh, if this plant is diseased or not, or if this plant is healthy or not, or this a particular disease or not. So these are the capabilities of what the Raspberry Pi interface with the Pi camera can do.
Okay, I think, thank you very much for that answer. So I think we are getting towards the end of the webinar. We just have about 2 minutes left. So is there any question before we say thank you to everyone and call it a day? Anyone with question? Any other question for Dr. Emmanuel? All right, so please, I've sent in the registration link. Please help us to fill the form. Put in all your details. If you have comments, questions, a follow-up question you wish you have, then we can get back to you on that once you fill in the form. And hopefully, this will open up some level of collaboration between the researchers here and those who are intending to go into farming. So please watch out for our next webinar. It's coming up on the 21st of March. So the title is Starlink, a Disruptive Internet Opportunities in Nigeria. So it will be a good time to meet with some of the industry experts as well to share their knowledge about Starlink. What are the opportunities this technology is going to provide for us